Pure magic theory? What a joke. The old voices came back to him with cruel clarity. He couldn't even present a thesis at the Academy conference, could he? Their mockery still burned as if it had been said yesterday. I heard he sent a manuscript to Lord Li Hoyol just to ride his coattails. They laughed cruelly without trying to hide it. So it's true about Senior Vangrith, huh? Every word was another cut. What could we possibly learn from a failure like him? One of them sneered, before their companions hurriedly hushed them. Watch your mouths. Keep it down. If we make a scene, it'll only make Senior Vangrith look even more pathetic. Even after they walked away, the humiliation stayed behind like poison in the air. A parasite wasting the tower's budget. Trapped in the demon's grasp, Vangrith stood frozen beneath the weight of those memories, drowning in the bitterness of his own self-loathing. I made them say those things, he thought. I'm pathetic. I'm wretched. Despair poured over him in heavy waves. It's too late to run. Whether he meant himself, the others, or everyone caught in the disaster, the words sounded like the final surrender of a man who had already fallen too far. The demon dragged more of its torso out from the void, forcing its way further into the world inch by inch. System alert. Spatial rift, imminent collapse. Even faced with that warning, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo did not waver for a single moment. You can still escape this fate, Bennett. No, Vangrith Tom. The system window flickered into existence once more, its cold blue light flashing insistently before his eyes like a final warning. The message pulsed again and again, as if the unseen mechanism behind it was urging him to make a choice before the moment of no return arrived. The sealed pentagram of forbidden and corrupt knowledge had finally chosen its tribute. Ancient symbols glowed faintly in the air, humming with ominous power. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo calmly withdrew the mysterious artifact from within the ritual boundary, his movements slow and deliberate, as though the weight of centuries rested upon the object in his hand. Senior Mage of Pure Magic Theory, Vangrith Tom. The voice declared with chilling formality. Your absence from the conference shall be judged through this very duel. Tom instinctively grabbed his face, stunned by the sudden proclamation. His mind raced as the words echoed around him. The academic conference was not yet finished. This confrontation had arrived far too soon. Meanwhile, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo calmly raised the star-shaped relic in his hand, and the artifact immediately began releasing waves of ancient arcane energy. Skill, exorcism ritual, activated. The words rang out with ceremonial authority. I formally invite my opponent to participate in this sacred ceremony. The magic circle beneath their feet glowed brighter, signaling that the ritual had already begun. From the distorted space ahead, a demon stepped forward slowly, its presence radiating suffocating malice. Normally this battlefield would belong to a demon hunter, a place where evil was hunted down without mercy. But the situation was spiraling beyond control. Time was slipping away rapidly, and the dimensional tear behind the creature continued to rupture wider with every passing second. Those watching from afar could only stare in stunned disbelief. The unfolding anomaly defied every rule of magic they understood, leaving the observers frozen in shock. What in the world is happening? Someone gasped. The system alarms screamed relentlessly as the spatial rift began trembling violently. Reality itself warped and twisted before their eyes, as if the landscape had become a distorted reflection in shattered glass. Dimensional rift, shattered. Recommended level, 1000. The warning message appeared across the system interface, glowing ominously like a prediction of catastrophe. The system updated again. Recommended level, 1100. Then again, recommended level, 1200. Each update climbed higher than the last, as if the danger itself were rapidly evolving. The difficulty was rising at an alarming rate. Marcello lifted his trembling hand, staring at the towering figure of the great demon before him. The sheer difference in power made the confrontation feel hopeless. Do we even stand a chance against that thing? Someone whispered nervously. Marcello took a breath before speaking with grim determination. If the situation worsens, I will teleport Lord Li Hoyol and Vangrith Tom to safety. I will remain behind to seal the dimension myself. Meanwhile, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo shielded his face from the violent winds. The magical storm spilling from the rift roared like a hurricane, threatening to swallow everything nearby. If I get any closer to the ritual circle, someone muttered anxiously. The pressure of that mana alone will crush me. At that exact moment, a sudden burst of radiant light exploded from within the great demon's grasp, illuminating the battlefield. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo glanced around the battlefield, his eyes widening slightly at what he was witnessing. Even he seemed momentarily surprised by the sudden shift in magical energy. This is light magic, someone realized in astonishment. The suffocating pressure that had been crushing everyone moments earlier vanished almost instantly. Yet the great demon merely sneered, its expression twisted with mocking amusement as it looked down upon them. Well now, the demon hissed with cruel delight. I seem to have caught a little rat attempting to scurry away. Its voice dripped with contempt. Is this pitiful resistance your final act? Despite the dire situation, a faint and confident smile appeared on the hunter's lips. He had cleverly hijacked the chaotic mana spilling from the rift and rewoven it into an entirely new structure using blinding light magic. The maneuver was risky, but brilliant. Now, with the energy stabilized, the dimensional breach could finally be sealed. Excellent work, he said with effortless arrogance, as if such brilliance were expected. As Vangrith Tom began performing the exorcism, the system interface flashed open, signaling a classic moment of magical leveling and growth. A towering pillar of sacred fire suddenly erupted from his body, blazing upward like a divine beacon piercing the heavens. The flames radiated holy energy powerful enough to shake the air itself. In an instant, his consciousness drifted away from the physical battlefield and entered a silent alternate dimension, an empty metaphysical realm where only willpower and magic existed. But something was wrong. Where was the demon hiding? He scanned the vast void carefully, only to sense a chilling presence directly behind him. The demon had been waiting there all along, preparing a counter-ritual designed to ensnare him. How foolish, the demon scoffed. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo, is it? It tilted its head with curiosity. Still, I must admit your appearance here surprises me. I believed every last demon hunter had perished during the holy war long ago. The creature erupted into cruel laughter that echoed across the empty realm. In response, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo calmly manifested a glowing sphere of radiant energy within his palm. The holy war, he replied flatly. Spare me the pointless chatter. His voice was cold and steady. I do not waste time conversing with prey. The demon straightened to its full height, eyes burning with fury. Many servants of the evil god spoke with such arrogance, right before my ritual shattered their minds. Let us see how long your sanity lasts, the demon snarled. Suddenly, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo froze mid-step. Something felt wrong, like a tremor rippling through reality itself. Outside the spiritual realm, the system alarms blared loudly. A new message flashed urgently across the interface. Warning! The demon had begun forcing its way through the dimensional barrier, releasing its full catastrophic power into the physical world. The monstrous entity surged violently toward the rift's opening. The very fabric of space shuddered under the strain. Like magic, Marcello shouted in alarm as the glow began fading. It's disappearing. Yet Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo remained completely still, eyes tightly shut. His spirit was fully anchored within the metaphysical battlefield, refusing to retreat. Has Vangrith Tom's mana been exhausted? Someone muttered nervously. During the ritual, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo was utterly defenseless. The glowing circles of light flickered weakly, threatening to collapse. At this rate, both of them would perish. I have no choice, Marcello decided grimly. I must evacuate young Master Li Hoyle immediately and remain behind myself. But just as he prepared to act, a firm hand suddenly grabbed his arm, stopping him. Sir Hoyle. The calm voice of Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo cut through the chaos. Meanwhile, within the spiritual realm, the demon suddenly recoiled in visible shock, as if it had sensed something impossible. You, who exactly are you? It demanded, its voice trembling with sudden unease. Even after revealing my true form, the demon growled. You still have the will to retaliate against me? The monster stared in disbelief as enormous golden magic circles began forming one after another before its eyes. Their brilliance illuminated the entire void. What kind of magic is this? The demon's voice cracked with panic. My regeneration, it has stopped. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo stepped forward calmly, a radiant artifact glowing intensely within his grasp. Wait, stop, the demon shouted desperately. The glowing sigils shot forward like spears, impaling the creature instantly. It shrieked in unbearable agony. How is this possible? Before its eyes, pure light magic, perfectly adapted and synthesized, was being born. Though Tom's technique could not rival the overwhelming scale of an archmage, each individual beam of light carried absolute lethality. Inside the exorcism domain, even his aesthetic stat had risen to near-divine levels. The system chimed. Aesthetic stat activated. Magic initiated. Automatic effect engaged. Divine judgment upon the filth of the evil god. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo spoke with calm finality. Your execution is guaranteed. Dozens of glowing orbs formed around the demon, embodying its deepest fear. I believed I exterminated your entire species during the Holy War, the hunter murmured coldly, almost thoughtfully. From the immense magic circle above, 1,000 spears of light rained down like a merciless storm, piercing the great demon again and again in a relentless barrage. Trying desperately to escape, the creature clawed frantically at its own throat as the ground outside trembled violently. From the battlefield outside, Marcelo watched in disbelief as the dimensional rift slowly began sealing itself shut. In a final desperate move, the demon reached out to anchor itself to the world, finally releasing its grip on Tom. Marcelo reacted instantly, conjuring countless chains of magic to catch the falling boy safely. Did you really believe I would allow you to take him? The great demon struggled wildly against the invisible restraining force. Release me. Stop looking at me like that. The creature shrieked hysterically under Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's piercing hawk-like gaze. With a thunderous boom, the dimensional rift finally slammed shut completely. The sound echoed across the battlefield like the closing of a massive gate. Yet something horrifying remained behind. The demon's severed hand was still trapped within this reality. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo clenched his teeth in irritation, realizing what had happened. That coward, he muttered. It severed its own limb to escape, like a lizard abandoning its tail. Marcelo's eyes widened with dread. No, this isn't over yet. The severed hand slowly levitated into the air, and Vangrith Tom was still clutched tightly within its monstrous palm. Inside the endless void between dimensions, the demon twisted violently in pain, its body racked with unbearable agony. I cannot regenerate the limb, it hissed through clenched teeth. The loss throbbed like fire along its severed arm. Yet despite the torment, it forced itself to endure. But I had no other choice. Sacrificing it was the only way to escape. That man, that human, the demon snarled, baring its teeth in furious hatred. He's not normal. He's a monster. Even as the pain surged through its form, it gritted its teeth and pushed forward through the darkness, desperately trying to outrun the memory of Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo. Even he cannot chase me across the dimensional divide, the demon muttered, trying to reassure itself. But just as it thought those words, space rippled silently in front of it, and suddenly Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo appeared directly in its path, materializing out of the void itself like a silent executioner waiting at the end of the road. And just where do you think you're going? Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo asked calmly. The demon froze mid-escape. Its entire body recoiled in sheer terror, as if it had just seen something impossible standing before it. Impossible? The demon croaked in disbelief. How did he break through the dimensional wall? Before it stood Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo, surrounded by a suffocating aura of killing intent so dense it seemed to choke the void itself. A terrifying thought crossed the demon's mind. Was the activation of the Vortex Tower his doing? The memory of that ancient machine alone was enough to send fear stabbing through its heart. If that theory was correct, it meant something far worse than defeat. It meant this human possessed the terrifying ability to cross dimensions at will. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo silently watched the demon retreat, sensing its consciousness slipping further away from his grasp. The creature was inching closer to the threshold separating worlds. If it completely crosses over, the exorcism ritual will collapse. He realized he could not pursue much farther. Then his voice rang through the void, sharp and final, like a judge's gavel striking down a verdict. "Hear me well, you one-armed filth," Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo declared, his voice echoing through the darkness. "I will remember this transgression." The threat lingered heavily in the air, carrying the quiet promise of inevitable retribution. The demon shuddered uncontrollably at those words. Far away, back in the physical world, a strange and eerie wind began howling from the sealed dimensional rift, as though the boundary between worlds still trembled from the battle. "He has fled," Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo announced calmly once he returned to reality. His voice carried no frustration, only cold certainty. Marcello blinked in confusion, struggling to process everything that had just happened. "Huh. It matters not," Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo reassured him with quiet confidence, as though the escape of the demon had never truly concerned him. "That severed arm was only a distraction," he continued, like a lizard abandoning its tail to survive. No sooner had the words left his lips than the grotesque limb began dissolving into thin mist. With the demon's grip gone, Vengrith Tom slipped free and began falling rapidly toward the ground below. "Tom!" Marcello lunged forward without hesitation, catching the falling boy before he struck the ground. "Tom, are you all right?" he asked urgently, shaking him gently. "It's me, Marcello." "Open your eyes," Marcello insisted, trying to rouse the unconscious mage. As he watched the scene unfold, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo felt a sudden realization settle deep within his mind, something profound he had sensed during the ritual itself. During the exorcism, the demon's overwhelming terror had left a mark within his soul. That fear had been real, raw, and unmistakable. The creature had truly believed its entire existence would be erased, just like the limb it had sacrificed. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo looked down at the fading particles of the severed arm dissolving into nothingness. The demon feared one thing above all, that Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo would remember it. And as long as that terror remained burned into its mind, the fleeing monster would never dare return to the human realm again. Just then, a holographic system window chimed softly beside Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo. Quest updated. Objective: uncover the truth behind the dark power. The next line appeared beneath it. Demonic force detected within Vengrith Tom. Status: connection to Magic Tower leadership identified. What is this? Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo frowned slightly as he unscrewed the cap of his water bottle, staring at the glowing system window in mild irritation. The display showed progress 1/2. What does that even mean? He muttered quietly. Is the true cause not yet eliminated? His gaze darkened slightly. Does that mean there's still another player behind all this? So it wasn't over yet. While Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo took a slow sip of water, Marcello hovered anxiously beside the awakening Vengrith Tom. "How do you feel?" he asked carefully. "The elder said he sent you here on a mission, didn't he?" Tom rubbed his chin groggily as consciousness returned. "Yes, Elder Karamziva told me clearly," he said slowly. "He said the truth I saw was hidden here. He even personally approved my travel documents." Tom frowned deeply. "But when I arrived, something strange happened. A foreign force suddenly took control of my mind." Tom's eyes widened as the memory resurfaced. Why would Lord Karamziva arrange something like a demon summoning? Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo's reply came immediately, blunt and ice-cold. "Because he is a demon worshipper." The words fell like a hammer. Shock rippled through everyone present. "There are people in this world," Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo continued, "who willingly abandon their humanity and become servants of the abyss. I already saw traces of their corruption back in Frost," he said quietly, recalling the blood-inscribed magic formation carved into the wall. He turned sharply. "We returned to the magic tower immediately." Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo gave the order without hesitation. "We have an appointment to keep with Elder Karamziva." The quest log flickered ominously once more. Quest: the truth of the possession. Current objective: Confront the archmages within the Magic Tower's High Council. Identify the demon worshipper hiding among the elders. Meanwhile, at the highest pinnacle of the Magic Tower stood a secret chamber hidden from all outsiders. No ordinary mage even knew it existed. Inside the chamber, 3 grand thrones stood in solemn silence. It appears the summoning has failed, a voice said calmly. Karamzeva rose from his seat, his tone dripping with disdain. I expected nothing from that disappointment, Vangrith Tom, he sneered coldly. Pathetic. He couldn't even manage to die properly for the sake of his clan. From the shadows, another figure spoke. What now, Karamzeva? If the boy reveals everything, the elder chuckled darkly. Before that happens, I will make the first move. Do you still not understand? Karamzeva said quietly. With a sudden motion, he tore open a portal in the air, his magical aura flaring violently around him. Summon every high mage in the tower, he commanded coldly. It is time to punish those fools who dared violate our sacred laws. Elsewhere, Grand fell Claudi Arpius Romeo wiped sweat from his brow, his face tightened with suppressed anger. Damn it all. Marcello looked at him in confusion, unable to understand the sudden burst of frustration. Grand fell Claudi Arpius Romeo. Why are we heading straight to Karamzeva? Marcello demanded anxiously. What's the point of confronting him now? He grabbed Granfell's collar in panic. You saw what Tom could do. If a high mage is that terrifying, imagine the power of a tower elder. Marcello quickly projected his voice through magic. This space is cut off from reality. Opening a portal here is impossible. But the moment we leave the rift, I'll open one directly to the magic tower. Marcello started toward the exit, but someone shouted desperately, No, don't go out there. That's suicide. Give me time. Let me think of another plan. Suddenly the man froze mid-sentence. His eyes widened as he noticed something strange. A bizarre violet stream of mana was flowing through the air. Wait, my lord, don't step outside yet, he shouted urgently. He spun around in alarm. A force summoning spell will activate the moment we leave the rift, he gasped. What? A force summon? Before anyone could react, the outside magic surged forward and swallowed them whole. Where in the world were they being dragged to? The answer appeared instantly. The destination was clear. It was Karamzeva himself casting the force summoning. When the light faded, the grand hall of the magic tower stood before them, filled wall to wall with high mages. Every single high mage had gathered in one place. Behind them stood Vangrith Tom and Marcello, placing their fists over their hearts in formal salute. 5-star mages of the tower, they declared respectfully. We greet the honored elders. A booming voice echoed through the hall. High Mage Vangrith Tom, the rising star of our tower. You departed without permission, the voice continued coldly, and disrupted the order of this tower. The gathered mages stared down at him with icy expressions. The laws of the magic tower are absolute. I hereby sentence you to the abyss. Tom's jaw dropped in shock. The abyss? He hurriedly tried to explain. Please wait. This is a misunderstanding. Elder Karamzeva personally sent me there. My exit permit is valid. But before he could continue, dozens of mages raised their hands, spells already aimed directly at him. Karamzeva sneered from his throne. You, Vangrith Tom, claimed you wished to seek truth beyond the tower. That was the only reason your permit was approved. Tom clutched the permit tightly, his face draining of color. A strange symbol flickered within the elder's eyes. But didn't you perform a demon summoning ritual inside that rift? Karamzeva asked calmly. Tom flinched. That energy, the unmistakable aura of demonic magic. Tom suddenly pointed a trembling finger toward the elder. How would you know that a demon ritual happened inside that rift? A heavy magical pressure surged from him as realization struck. Unless you were there. His voice hardened. You're the one behind this, Karamzeva, aren't you? Fury burned in Tom's eyes. The hall fell completely silent as every mage turned to stare at him. Whispers erupted among the gathered mages. A demon summoning ritual? Is Vangrith Tom actually a demon worshipper? But the elder's eyes gleamed dangerously as he smiled coldly. Oh, what a foolish adventurer you are. It seems you've been thoroughly deceived by the silver tongue of Vangrith Tom, the elder said, his voice smooth but poisonous. Do you truly intend to trust the desperate lies of a man cornered by punishment? His eyes hardened with contempt. I will overlook your rudeness just this once. But Lee Hoyle did not even bother reacting to the threat. He simply stared back, unshaken. I'll ask you one more time, he said, his tone turning colder and sharper. Mages of the tower cannot leave freely. Departure requires the approval of the majority of the elders. His words rang through the hall with deliberate weight, leaving no room to dodge the point. The gathered mages listened in complete silence, every ear fixed on the exchange. So then, Lee Hoyle pressed. Which elders approved Vangrith Tom's departure? His gaze locked onto the man before him like a blade. Besides you, Karam Ziva, who else signed off on it? The elder's brow twitched and pulled tight in irritation. For a brief moment, his composure cracked. Then another elder stepped in to defend him, but the tension in the room had already shifted. Arrogant fool, someone muttered under their breath. You dare cast suspicion on us? The elder snapped, unable to fully hide his anger now. As we already stated, we approved it because Vangrith Tom claimed he was seeking truth beyond the tower. That was the reason, and nothing more. Then another elder spoke up without warning, her voice calm but pointed. Is that so? How very strange. Her eyes swept across the hall. Because for a mage to leave the tower, doesn't the rule require the matter to be passed through a full meeting of all 5 elder mages? She continued, and her words cut through the hall like ice drawn across bare skin. There was no anger in her voice, only cold precision, which made it far more dangerous. The 2 conspirators visibly flinched. Then Belia Yusha spoke with firm authority. And yet I heard absolutely nothing about this matter. Her gaze was unwavering, and the accusation in her tone was impossible to ignore. Isn't that right, Senios? She asked without taking her eyes off them. He gave a slow, deliberate nod, confirming her words before the entire assembly. The silence that followed turned even heavier. A faint smirk touched Lee Hoyle's lips. The mask had finally begun to crack. The truth is already out, he said coldly. So stop hiding behind titles and show your real faces, you demon-worshipping trash. One of the corrupted elders exploded in outrage. Absurd. This is madness, he shouted, his voice cracking with fury. What are you all standing there for? Your stars are being insulted to your faces. Throw that adventurer into the abyss immediately, the elder roared. But not a single mage moved. No one stepped forward. No one raised a spell. The hall remained so silent that the pause itself felt like a verdict. Then Mathis Dean Carl stepped forward. The mages will deliver their own judgment, he said steadily, his voice carrying across the chamber. And if that judgment is wrong, we will bear the responsibility ourselves. The elders stared at him in disbelief. What? One by one, the mages shifted their aim away from Lee Hoyle and toward the elevated podium instead. The change was immediate and unmistakable. The 2 corrupt elders froze where they stood, shock washing over their faces as the room turned against them. If this judgment proves to be a mistake, one of the mages declared, then we will accept the consequences to the bitter end. There was fear in the hall, yes, but also resolve. They had chosen their side. I swear it, Mathis Dean Carl said, his voice low and resolute. The corrupt elder ground his teeth so hard his jaw trembled, realizing the tide had fully turned against him. You traitors, he hissed, trembling with rage. Then, suddenly, he covered his mouth and burst into manic laughter, the sound sharp and wrong, echoing unnaturally through the conference hall. He turned toward Karam Ziva, his eyes gleaming with panic beneath the madness. So the prisoner meant for the abyss has changed, has it? His thoughts raced in desperation. Then I have to escape, now? Even Lee Hoyle was caught off guard for a split second. What? In the next instant, the elder cast a spell that sent a violent shock through the entire chamber. A burst of unnatural energy surged outward, stunning the room. Vangrith Tom stared at it in alarm, instantly sensing that something about the spell was deeply wrong. Teleportation. Tom blurted out. You can't use that inside the conference room. But Marcello shook his head at once, his expression grim. No, that's not teleportation. His eyes narrowed as he identified it. It's a forced summoning ritual, one that activates only when specific conditions are met. Before disappearing, Karam Ziva turned his gaze toward Lee Hoyle. I will remember your name, he said in a low, chilling voice. We will meet again. The promise sounded less like a threat and more like a curse. Then he vanished into the twisting void, swallowed by the spell's distorted light. At that very moment, a system window popped into view before Lee Hoyle, glowing sharply in the aftermath of the chaos. Quest: Truth of the Magic Tower Objective. Identify the demon worshipper among the elders. Success. The notification was followed by a flood of completion messages and reward windows, all stacking rapidly across his vision until they nearly filled it. Inside, Lee Hoyle screamed with delight. My influence is going through the roof. Ah, this is insane. This is the real jackpot of a leveling moment. Even while keeping a straight face on the outside, his mind was practically exploding with satisfaction. An elder spoke at last, her voice solemn and steady. That escape confirms our suspicions. Then Belie Yusha stepped forward to formally address the room, carrying the authority of someone who had already reached her conclusion. Effective immediately, she declared. Excluding Karamzeva, the two elders who falsely approved Vangrith Tom's departure are hereby stripped of their positions. Her expression did not soften in the slightest. The remaining two will be imprisoned within Mong for the rest of their lives. This meeting is adjourned. With that, she turned toward Marcello. May I entrust the remaining matters to you? Marcello bowed deeply at once, while Lee Hoyle stood at his side with quiet pride. Yes, my lord, Marcello replied. Then, just as the chamber began to settle, the game system flashed another new quest window. Quest: Rebuild the tower from its foundation. The moment the words appeared, Lee Hoyle panicked internally. Another magic tower quest? Seriously? A small tremor ran through him as he realized just how much authority and influence had suddenly been placed in his hands. I've already squeezed enough out of this tower as it is, he thought, utterly bewildered. The confusion was plain on his face for a moment. If I keep stacking influence, relationships, and rewards here, just how much more can I pull out of this place? Then, little by little, his expression shifted. Uncertainty faded, and confidence took its place. But before dealing with any of that, something else mattered more. He clicked through a list of repeatable physical training quests, scanning them with quick, practiced movements. His priorities were already changing from politics to growth. After returning home, Lee Hoyle immediately began sprinting laps around the estate park. His body moved hard and fast while his mind kept racing through calculations, rewards, risks, and the next possible route forward. There had been two enormous gains this time, and both of them were too valuable to ignore. Even now, the thought of them kept his pulse sharp with excitement. The first was a massive rise in his influence within the magic tower. The second was the loot purified and left behind through Decarabia's exorcism ritual, a reward so valuable it still didn't feel entirely real. Among those spoils, one item stood out in particular in his memory, the pure sense of knowledge. Even just recalling it made his attention sharpen immediately. That artifact contained an astonishing volume of data on nearly every herb and mineral in Anna. After drying his hair, Lee Hoyle stood still for a moment, admiring the blue gemstone in his hand. I expected it to be good since it's a top-tier epic item, he murmured. But this is far beyond what I imagined. It did more than provide knowledge of thousands upon thousands of herbs. It also greatly enhanced magical efficiency when detecting mineral traces. His gaze sharpened as he reached for the second item recovered from Decarabia's remains, curiosity rising all over again. Lee Hoyle held both treasures in his hands and quietly replayed the battle in his mind from beginning to end. The word's hidden sense of knowledge lingered in his thoughts as he considered exactly how much those rewards might change his future path. He lowered his eyes to the item glowing with a soft blue light in his left hand. Its shine was steady and alluring, hinting at danger and opportunity in equal measure. The system description was brutally simple, an item that, once activated, would open a portal leading directly to a level 250 hunting ground. It was the kind of reward that could change everything in one reckless decision. The Predator's hunting ground, a savage arena where monsters devoured other monsters in a never-ending cycle of bloodshed. It was a place ruled entirely by instinct, violence, and survival, where weakness was erased almost instantly. Lee Hoyle imagined the carnage and silently assessed it. Barbaric, sure, he thought, his expression calm, but efficient. For rapid leveling and brutal growth, there were few places more appealing than a battlefield like that. With cool, almost detached composure, he tightened his tie. Then he slipped on his suit jacket with neat, effortless elegance, as if preparing for a formal appointment instead of a slaughterhouse. The sheer density of monsters promised a ridiculous flood of experience points. Level 250. A hunting ground at exactly the right edge of danger. To him, it felt like the perfect difficulty setting, harsh enough to grow fast, but not so overwhelming that it became wasteful. Lee Hoyle tightened his grip on his weapon. The night was still young, and the hunt was only beginning. Then the system chimed, signaling his arrival as he stepped into the predator's swamp. A thick, demonic fog clogged the air the moment he entered, damp and heavy enough to make breathing feel unpleasant. The swamp was alive with the shrill, ceaseless screeching of insects, and the whole place carried the rank smell of rot and old blood. Then, without warning, the uneasy silence broke apart. A giant mantis crashed violently into a pack of wild dogs, the creatures tearing into one another in a frenzy of claws, fangs, and twitching limbs. But the food chain had something even worse waiting above them. From the shadows burst a colossal brown bear, massive enough to feel more like a living boulder than an animal. Its roar rolled through the swamp and shook the very ground beneath his feet. In one savage rush, the bear slaughtered all of them. Flesh flew, bones cracked, and the brief battle ended in a heartbeat of overwhelming brutality. Then a calm voice cut through the carnage from nearby, quiet but unmistakable. The bear slowly turned its bloodied head. There, walking toward it without the slightest sign of hesitation, was a man approaching with complete and terrifying calm. Every step he took felt measured, deliberate, and utterly fearless. A cold smile rested on Lee Hoyle's lips as he raised his blade. In the next instant, the weapon ignited in a blaze of brilliant blue light, sharp enough to split the darkness itself. The hunt had truly begun. How uncivilized, he scoffed, his voice dripping with cool disdain as he looked over the savage scene. Really now, let me show you what proper etiquette looks like. Even in the middle of a monster swamp, Lee Hoyle sounded as polished and composed as if he were correcting someone at a formal banquet. Then Lee Hoyle lunged forward without hesitation. The beast answered with a thunderous roar, swinging its razor-sharp claws in a brutal arc meant to tear him apart. The clash came fast, violent, and heavy enough to shake the damp ground beneath them. Meanwhile, far away in the depths of the magic tower, Marcello stood before Elder Maju in a chamber weighed down by silence. The atmosphere there was nothing like the wild chaos of the swamp, yet the tension in the room felt just as sharp. The two traitorous elders have been imprisoned, Marcello reported in a grim, steady voice. However, that slippery rat, Karamziva, is still at large. The frustration in his tone was restrained, but impossible to miss. Escaping justice had only made Karamziva more dangerous. Elder Yu gave a quiet nod. Understood. You've done excellent work, Marcello. Marcello hesitated for a brief moment before continuing, choosing his words carefully. Elder Yu, Elder Senios, as the last remaining pillars of the tower, I have a humble request to make. Please allow the mages of the tower to operate outside these walls. His voice was respectful, but there was real urgency behind the request now. This was not a matter that could wait. Marcello's tone sharpened as he pressed on. Demon worshippers have already infiltrated our ranks. We are no longer dealing with distant rumors or hidden suspicions. The corruption is already here. We can't afford to remain passive observers anymore, Marcello said firmly. Not after everything that's happened. His eyes lowered for a moment as guilt crept into his expression. We committed unforgivable sins against the demon hunters. Then, seeing the elders lost in thought, he continued before the silence could stop him. At the very least, allow us to repay even a fraction of the debt we owe to Lee Hoyle. That name made Elder Yu pause. The room went just a little quieter, as if the weight of that single name carried more meaning than any speech could. Then, suddenly, Elder Senios's voice echoed through the room. Elder Senios votes in favor. The voice declared clearly, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. The decision landed with simple, decisive force. Elder Yu let out a long breath, and a faint smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was small, but genuine, as though he had finally accepted a truth he could no longer avoid. Well, he said at last, I suppose I can't refuse now. Then he added, more formally, I also approve this motion. For a moment, Marcelo could barely believe what he had just heard. Relief flashed plainly across his face. But before Marcelo could celebrate, the elder raised a finger and stopped him. However, there is one condition. At that same moment, back in the swamp, the battle had already reached its end. The scene shifted from tense negotiation to brutal victory. Lee Hoyle stood over the massive bear's fallen body in complete victory. Golden light poured around him in warm, radiant waves as the system calmly announced his growth. Against all that blood and mud, the glow around him looked almost unreal. That burst of mana recovery and level gain made one thing painfully obvious. His grinding speed was absurdly broken. The numbers climbing before him were so efficient they almost looked unfair. He cut down beast after beast without slowing, his levels rising steadily as the slaughter continued. Then a thick swarm of giant mosquitoes descended from above in a shrill black cloud. Lee Hoyle didn't even flinch. He simply released a wave of fire and burned the pests out of the air in an instant. Another level-up chime rang out through the swamp, bright and clear against the sounds of gore and insects. It came so naturally now that it almost felt routine. He let out a quiet breath and uncorked a flask while standing in the middle of a mountain of monster corpses. Even surrounded by death, his movements stayed neat, controlled, and strangely elegant. Tougher than I expected, Lee Hoyle murmured to himself, taking a refined sip as though he were sampling wine instead of recovering in a swamp. His tone was calm, but there was clear satisfaction hidden underneath it. Thank heavens I prepared this herbal tea, he said softly. The brew worked immediately, washing away his accumulated fatigue and restoring his condition for the next 3 hours. The refreshing effect spread through his body almost at once. As he lowered the flask, Lee Hoyle's eyes swept slowly across the swamp. His gaze narrowed with sharp calculation, no longer focused only on monsters, but on what else this place might be hiding. With vegetation this dense, there have to be rare ingredients hidden somewhere, he thought. The moment that idea settled in his mind, his eyes locked onto something unusual in the distance. Mistletoe of contemplation. A transparent, ethereal flower bloomed high atop a tree, delicate and ghostly, as if it had been woven from moonlight rather than petals. Its faint glow made it stand out even through the swamp's murky haze. Jackpot, he said under his breath. It was a rare herb, an exceptional one, that granted 4 full stat points. Finding something like that in the wild was the kind of luck players dreamed about. Without his enhanced senses, he would have walked right past it without ever noticing. Holding the precious herb in his hand, Lee Hoyle's inner gamer practically screamed in triumph. This was the kind of reward that made every brutal minute of grinding worth it. 4 free stat points meant the same value as grinding through roughly 4 levels by hand. It was an absurd gain. But just as he savored the thought, the flower in his grasp suddenly trembled and vibrated strangely. Is this? Lee Hoyle's eyes sharpened at once. Then the flower snapped irritably, and a tiny voice cried out. Put me down, human. Are you asking to be punished? To see a spirit without a contract required extraordinary mana sensitivity and a soul pure enough to perceive such a being at all. A thought struck Lee Hoyle so suddenly that even he paused. Wait, does this mean Granfell's mind is actually pure? The realization was so absurd that it nearly threw off his composure for a second. He stared at the tiny creature clinging to the plant. I'm taking this mistletoe, he said flatly. Find another place to sleep. But the little spirit wrapped itself around the herb even more tightly, refusing to let go. No, the spirit cried. My mana is critically low. I've been completely cut off from the great forest. Its voice sounded small, defensive, and genuinely desperate. I can only survive by leeching energy from this herb, the spirit confessed. Then Lee Hoyle understood the situation. The dimensional rift had severed this land from the main continent, cutting off the natural flow it depended on. Keeping his tone calm, he asked, So there's truly no other way for you to restore your strength? The spirit puffed up indignantly. A contract with a human would work, it admitted with obvious reluctance. But I refused to lower myself like that. Its pride was still intact, even in such a pitiful state. Lee Hoyle froze for a moment at that word. A contract. Then another thought hit him immediately. If this spirit really came from Arcana, then once the rift closed, it would disappear along with the connection to that world. His mind began moving fast. But if a contract binds us, then I could summon it again in other rifts. The possibilities expanded instantly in his head. This wasn't just about getting a cute spirit companion. The value of this was far greater than that. This could become a living information hotline to the continent of Arcana. So Lee Hoyle smoothly slipped into his polished, high-status persona and said, "I happen to be acquainted with the one contracted to the great Karamzeva." His tone was effortless, as if mentioning such a connection were nothing special at all. The spirit's eyes flew wide open in shock. "The Archmage's contractor, Fan Roth?" It blurted out, visibly stunned that this human might know someone of such status. "You know him?" The spirit gasped. And above him, Lee Hoyle continued smoothly, stands the chief researcher, Marcello. He delivered the line with total confidence, piling pressure on the spirit one title at a time. The tiny spirit trembled in midair. Even higher than that, Lee Hoyle looked down at it with cool, imperious calm. "I am his equal," he said. His expression didn't move in the slightest as he completed the lie with absolute certainty. "I offer you a contract," Lee Hoyle said. "The real question is whether you are worthy of one." The spirit instantly dropped into a panicked bow in midair, practically prostrating itself on nothing but empty space. "Forgive my insolence," the little spirit cried. "I'm only a lesser dryad." Then it hesitated and timidly added, "But may I ask one question?" It gathered its courage and went on. "You are equal to Marcello and even above Fan Roth, the dragon contractor." The whole setup sounded exactly like the kind of exaggerated hierarchy from a generic leveling fantasy, but somehow, in this moment, the pressure felt completely real. "Get to the point," Lee Hoyle said flatly. The spirit stammered. "Why would someone as supreme as you want a contract with a lowly spirit like me?" Before Lee Hoyle could answer, a massive serpent burst from the darkness in a violent blur. Its jaws snapped shut with terrifying speed, swallowing both man and spirit whole in a single gulp. The attack was so sudden it felt like the swamp itself had bitten down on them. Darkness swallowed everything at once. Sound, light, and space vanished into a suffocating black void inside the monster's maw. Trapped inside the crushing throat of the beast, Lee Hoyle somehow remained perfectly calm. "What kind of creature is this?" he muttered, more annoyed than afraid. "A serpent," the spirit squeaked in panic. "Digestion will happen fast," the spirit cried. At that, Lee Hoyle's eyes flashed coldly in the dark. "I did not sweep through this entire swamp," he said, "just to end up as snake droppings." His patience was already gone. "That herb is mine." Lee Hoyle immediately began the ritual without wasting another second. "Here," the spirit shrieked nervously. "Sign it," he ordered coldly, pressing the contract forward even inside the monster's throat. "Unless you want to be digested, hurry up." The little spirit trembled in the air, clearly overwhelmed. "This is too much," she stammered. "Your standards are impossible." Then, in a shaking voice, she asked whether there were any special conditions needed for the pact. "No, it's not that," she admitted at last, her words barely louder than a whisper. I always dreamed of making a pact with a handsome human in a field full of blooming flowers," she confessed miserably, whispering eternal vows and exchanging rings woven from herbs. But Lee Hoyle had no patience at all for that fantasy. "Do it," he commanded coldly. A ruthless thought crossed his mind. "Should I just leave her here and take the herb instead?" The spirit let out a horrified shriek. "You're so mean," she cried. "Fine, I'm doing it." The moment she gave in, a blinding light exploded around her tiny body, swallowing her form in a brilliant glow as the contract began to take shape. System alert, spirit contract ritual initiated. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's eyes widened at once. This feeling was unmistakable. The lesser spirit's form was changing right in front of him, not just glowing, but truly evolving into something more refined. As he watched the transformation unfold, a clear realization rose in his mind. This was no random change. There was a reason behind it. A contractor's nature shapes the spirit bound to them, he realized. Her appearance, even the atmosphere around her, was shifting to reflect his own composed and noble bearing. Then the light slowly faded, and when she spoke again, Her voice had changed too. It now carried elegance and poise. Allow me to introduce myself once more. I am a lesser spirit of the verdant forest. To my contractor, Li Hoyle, I pledge eternal loyalty. In the name of the Forest Spirit King, I swear this oath. Inside, Li Hoyle nearly screamed in disbelief. She had gone from a tiny, strange blob into an absurdly cute, high-class noble spirit in a single moment. Then, realizing that her new master was still standing inside a monster's stomach, the spirit quickly gathered herself and spoke again. However, this place feels rather undignified for a first meeting, does it not? She said with graceful calm. Lord Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo, if you permit it, I shall escort you out at once. But Li Hoyle's attention had already drifted elsewhere. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's gaze had fixed itself on the mistletoe, which had begun glowing with a strange and vivid light. Why is the mistletoe of contemplation shining like that? He muttered. Then, boom. A massive branch burst outward with explosive force, tearing straight through the giant serpent's belly from the inside. Flesh split, scales cracked, and the entire corpse convulsed from the violent rupture. System, you have defeated the predator anaconda. The message flashed before him with cold clarity, confirming what the shredded corpse already made obvious. The serpent was dead. Level up. Bathed in the quiet aftershock of victory, Li Hoyle and the spirit stepped out from the torn carcass together. He looked around at the thick roots and giant branches spreading in every direction and thought, stunned by the scale of it all, wait, is this enormous thing really that tiny mistletoe from before? The lesser spirit fluttered gracefully in front of him, as if this display were perfectly natural. This is part of our inherent authority, she explained with a small hint of pride. It is the blessing of the spirits. Her tone was calm, but it carried ancient certainty. Any vegetation we bless can take root and flourish, no matter where it is planted, she continued. Li Hoyle's eyes gleamed at once. Anything, anywhere. That simple promise carried a terrifying amount of potential. That was practically a cheat skill for herb cultivation and magical agriculture. Still, outwardly he kept his usual stoic face. I see, he said coolly. So this is a power separate from mana, the raw force of nature itself. But almost immediately after that thought, Li Hoyle felt something else, an alarming drain spreading through his body. Hold on, he thought in sudden panic. Then his inner voice screamed, this spirit is drinking my mana like it's free tap water. The drain was not subtle. It was aggressive, constant, and alarmingly casual, as if she assumed he had an endless reservoir to spare. Completely oblivious to his growing misery, the spirit lifted her hands in delight and cheered, her face bright with excitement. She looked genuinely thrilled by how smoothly everything was going. My contractor's power is bottomless, she said happily. No matter how much I draw, it just keeps overflowing. Grow strong, little tree. With this much power, I can turn this whole place into a jungle. Li Hoyle nearly groaned out loud. I think that's quite enough growth for now, he muttered with strained dignity. Then the system chimed again. Spirit contract complete. The marsh has received the blessing. Li Hoyle gave a small nod, forcing himself to stay composed despite the mana loss. So forming a contract with a spirit did more than just create a summonable ally. It also granted environmental and passive support effects. That alone made the contract far more valuable than it had first appeared. I still don't know exactly what Liet's blessing really does, he thought, studying the changes around him. But before anything else, I need my mana back. Then another line appeared before him. System, EXP gain and item drop rate in the marsh have increased. Time remaining, 59 minutes 59 seconds. At that, Li Hoyle's expression turned cold and razor-sharp. Then it's time to hunt, he said. And inside, his greed for loot flared brightly. One look at those boosted drop rates was enough to make his hands itch. This was exactly the kind of prime grinding window that no sane player would waste. While staring at the beautiful flower and the transformed surroundings, he calmly began planning his next moves. Every second mattered now, and the route ahead had to be efficient. First, harvest the mistletoe of contemplation, he decided. Then head straight for the monster dens. And with this new item in his possession, he now held knowledge covering every known mineral and plant on the continent. That meant the marsh had just become even more valuable. The moment he focused on the item, Lee Hoyle felt the information pour into his mind like a great river of condensed wisdom. It was not clumsy or chaotic. It settled cleanly into place, as if the knowledge had always belonged there, waiting to be unlocked. The spirit lifted one delicate hand and pointed toward a particularly chaotic region deeper below. That should be the heart of the swamp, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was caution in it now. Whatever lay there was clearly important. The beasts are constantly fighting over that place, she explained. But Lee Hoyle's enhanced knowledge sensed something deeper than monster territory. No, he said quietly, eyes narrowing. It's not the monsters. His attention locked onto a stone-like object emitting a faint, unnatural glow from the center of the chaos. Could that possibly be a seed of the world tree? He asked under his breath. Then he turned toward the spirit and asked more directly, "Can your blessing make a world tree sprout?" The question sounded outrageous, but he asked it with complete seriousness. The spirit flinched in obvious shock. The world tree? The heart of the continent? The source from which life itself spread? She looked genuinely shaken. I've never tried anything like that, but as Lee Hoyle watched the monsters circling the stone, he grew more certain by the second. The 5 senses granted by pure knowledge were already confirming his suspicion. It may look like an ordinary stone at first glance, he said, voice low and firm. But that is absolutely a world tree seed. Then a new question hit him. Why would something so divine be lying abandoned in a filthy place like this? The contradiction itself felt ominous. Suddenly, a sharp notification tone rang out, not just for him, but for every player connected to the server. World Quest initiated. The scale of the alert alone made it immediately clear that this was no ordinary event. Even players far away froze in place the moment the message appeared. One of them, Jang, had apparently been busy searching for a rare snail when the alert interrupted him. Global chat instantly erupted in confusion, speculation, and panic. But here in the swamp, Lee Hoyle and his spirit stared at the objective with deadly seriousness. Then the scattered clues in his mind suddenly snapped together. I get it now, he murmured. The wisdom from the pure sense of knowledge. It isn't just information. It's structured magic theory. That changed everything. This wasn't merely lore. It was instruction. Long ago, he continued, piecing the theory together. Demons used forbidden knowledge to threaten the world tree itself. The idea was chilling, but it fit too cleanly with what he was sensing from the seed and the corrupted environment around it. Sensing that darkness closing in, the world tree scattered its seeds across the continent in order to survive, he said, his voice steadier now. This is one of those lost children. Then he raised his magic and readied himself, his voice calm and decisive. He finally understood what this place was. The spirit blinked in confusion. Huh. But before she could ask more, roots burst forward to distract the beasts surrounding the area. Amid that sudden movement, Lee Hoyle declared, "We're going to make the world tree bloom here. Right now." His tone made it sound like a decision already made, not a dream. Make the world tree bloom by controlling this body? To him, absurdly enough, it already felt possible. Almost natural. Massive roots tore out of the earth and lashed through the battlefield, binding monster after monster into a tangled wooden prison. The entire swamp shook from the force of it. With no hesitation, Lee Hoyle drew his blade and plunged into the chaos. At the same time, he invoked Liet's blessing, calling on the spirit's support as he rushed into the heart of the monster pack. His movements were clean, direct, and merciless. Experience gain increased by 20%. With fluid grace and lethal precision, Lee Hoyle cut through the horde like a dancer moving through a rehearsed performance. Beast after beast fell before he even needed a second strike. Level up. Then another body dropped, another flash rang out, and before long, the slaughter was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Afterward, Lee Hoyle downed a flask of herbal tea and let out a rough breath. He was panting now. Swinging an actual sword again and again put a brutal strain on the body, no matter how calm he looked while doing it. It burns through my physical stamina way too fast, he admitted under his breath. If I didn't have these herbs on hand, I'd be finished already. The words were blunt, practical, and painfully true. This kind of grinding came at a real cost. He wiped his mouth and looked toward the dormant seed. I only have just enough tea left, he thought. And I saved as much mana as I could during the fight. Then his eyes sharpened. Please let it be enough to wake the tree. But just as he steadied himself, a chill crawled up his spine. The air suddenly turned heavy with crushing pressure. The spirit trembled violently. Something's coming, she whispered. Then the ground split apart with a deep, grinding roar, and a colossal shape slowly rose from the depths below. The sheer weight of its presence made the swamp feel smaller. A giant stone turtle towered over Li Hoyol, its ancient shell layered like weathered cliffs, and its body radiating a presence older than the swamp itself. It did not look like a mere monster. It looked like an age-given form. The spirit screamed, "It's the master of the forest!" Li Hoyol clicked his tongue and cursed under his breath. The timing could not have been worse. His mana was low, his stamina was worn down, and now something this massive had arrived. That damned forest guardian, he muttered. Is it here to protect the seed, or hoard it for itself? Of course a world quest in a leveling fantasy would never be simple. A tight wave of anxiety pressed against his chest. This is bad. My mana's almost gone. He gripped the hilt of his weapon until his knuckles turned pale. There's no other way, Li Hoyol told himself, hardening his resolve. I'll have to bring it down with nothing but steel. With mana running dry, he had no luxury left. If this guardian stood in the way, he would have to cut through it the old-fashioned way. He dropped into a combat stance and shouted at the Titan, "Go ahead. Try swallowing a lion." He was already bracing himself for an all-or-nothing clash, the kind of absurd final move that felt straight out of a grim action RPG. But the guardian did not move. Not even once. Li Hoyol paused, thrown completely off. Standing there with sword raised before the enormous creature, he felt a strange wave of confusion wash over him. Why was it just staring? There was no killing intent, no sudden attack, no sign of hostility at all. The silence became more unsettling than violence would have been. Then the lesser spirit descended gracefully to Li Hoyol's side and spoke in a voice touched by ancient memory. "The guardian of the green forest," she began softly, as if reciting lore older than kingdoms. Her tone alone made it clear this creature was not just another obstacle. It has always bowed before those with radiant souls and unwavering honor, she explained. That is the nature of this guardian. Her words hung in the air with quiet reverence, casting the giant turtle in a completely different light. Her gaze softened as she looked up at the stone turtle. Tragically, its natural lifespan ended ages ago, she said. And yet it still remains in this world, clinging to life as if it were protecting something more precious than its own existence. There was real sorrow in her voice now. Li Hoyol fell silent. Slowly, he reached out and rested one hand against the ancient shell. Then it hit him. Could it be? His thoughts sharpened into certainty. Has it been guarding the world tree's seed from demonic corruption all this time? The idea felt solemn, almost sacred. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a quiet whisper, worthy of a true noble. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, then continued, "Rest now. I'll inherit the pride you've protected for so long." It was not a command. It was a promise. As if answering that vow, the guardian suddenly burst into blinding golden light. The radiance surged outward in waves, washing over the swamp, the roots, the seed, and the spirit alike. It was bright enough to make the whole battlefield look reborn for a moment. Li Hoyol watched the brilliant light in silence as understanding slowly settled in. The guardian was not merely dying. It was willingly offering up its own essence, turning the last of its life into nourishment for the awakening seed. It was a final act of guardianship, proud and magnificent to the very end.